Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our 6th annual Gabelli Funds Columbia Business School Healthcare Symposium. My name is Carri Chan, and I'm the faculty director of the Healthcare and Pharmaceutical Management program at Columbia Business School. Our program provides curricular and extracurricular programming to support our students and alumni who are interested in the various facets of the healthcare industry. Our students are bright, ambitious, and eager to have an impact on the world as they embark on their careers. Today's event is a wonderful opportunity for them to learn from business leaders and to connect with them about some of the most pressing challenges and opportunities within the healthcare space. It is also an opportunity for them and our program to reconnect with so many of our alumni and industry friends. It's wonderful to see so many of you here today. It's a real testament to the strength, longevity, and connectedness of the CBS healthcare community. I want to extend our deepest gratitude to Mario Gabelli and the entire Gabelli Funds team for their continued partnership in making this symposium a reality. It's been a pleasure working with Jeff Jonas over the last few months, putting this together and the rest of the team. On behalf of our students and the healthcare program at CBS, we are so fortunate to have your consistent and enthusiastic support and engagement. This year, we have an exciting lineup of speakers and topics. I did want to make a note that we've had to make a few adjustments to the speakers due to some unforeseen circumstances. You can scan the QR code to find the most up-to-date program. Thank you to all of our speakers for being here today and sharing your expertise with everyone in the audience. We'll be exploring important areas from robotic surgery, digitization for patient care, and atrial fibrillation. Each of these areas offers significant opportunities for innovation and improvement for patient care. And I'm looking forward to hearing from our distinguished group of speakers on the latest trends and challenges in these areas. The goal of this symposium is to spark a dynamic exchange of ideas. And so I encourage all of you to come together, to engage, to connect, share ideas, and continue to contribute to the advancement of healthcare. With that, I'm going to pass the mic over to Jeff Jonas, portfolio manager at Gabelli Funds, who will provide a little bit of context before we formally kick off the panel portion of our program. Jeff?
Thank you, Carri, for those kind words. And on behalf of everyone at the Gabelli organization, I'd like to welcome you to our 6th annual Healthcare Symposium. And it's our 4th in-person event here at the Paley Center, with 2 that had to be virtual during COVID. So just by way of background, at Gabelli Funds, we formed our dedicated healthcare investing team about 23 years ago. We're doing the fundamental bottoms-up, hands-on research that the company's known for across all the different public companies and industries within the healthcare system. And we use our private market value with a catalyst approach to try to find undervalued securities and find catalysts that will unlock that value. Over the years, we've built a deep team. Jenny Tai is our first healthcare analyst following dental and orthopedic companies. About 3 years ago, we hired Daniel Barasa from Harvard Business School, who's following some of the pharmaceutical and insurance companies. Our most recent hire from Columbia is Elena Meng, following some of the diagnostic and international healthcare opportunities. And also Rebecca Stern helps us on sustainability and public policy. Now, one of the main reasons that we got into healthcare investing is that we simply saw that the world is getting older. The baby boomers are turning 65 and entering their prime years for healthcare consumption. In fact, over 10,000 of them are entering the Medicare program every single year. And we're seeing even faster growth in the 75 plus and the 85 plus age cohorts that use even more medical care. We see similar trends in Europe with a population that's actually slightly older than here in the US. And we see the most rapid aging in Asia and other emerging markets, especially where the birth rates have slowed dramatically. All that has fueled significant demand for healthcare spending. In fact, we spend over $4.5 trillion a year here in the United States. That's just over 18% of GDP. You can see that it spiked during COVID as we dealt with the pandemic and as we gave significant aid to many of the hospitals and providers across the healthcare system. But now we've returned to what is somewhat of a more normal level and a more normal growth rate going forward. So we desperately need to find more efficiency and productivity and bend the cost curve going forward. Again, in Europe, they might not spend as much as a percentage of GDP on healthcare, but they still struggle to fund it, and they struggle to find enough providers and actually give the care that their citizens demand. And again, in emerging markets, spending is growing at a double-digit rate. When people enter the middle class, one of the first things that they demand is healthcare for themselves and their family. Now, for the last 2 years at this conference, we've been talking about the rise of the new GLP-1 class of drugs for type 2 diabetes, for obesity, and for other conditions like sleep apnea and liver function problems. That's well on their way to being over a $100 billion annual market, especially as we get new entrants and we get oral pill and other types of administration for these drugs. That, along with better lifestyle changes and better nutrition, has possibly started to bend the obesity crisis that we've seen in this country. We've actually seen a slight drop in recent years. That hasn't been enough to control healthcare spending, especially given the high cost of these drugs. But I think if we look out over the next 5 to 10 years, we could see some pretty dramatic changes in health and well-being and hopefully outcomes here in the United States. So investing, especially in the public markets, has been a little bit challenging this year in the healthcare sector, especially relative to the big rally that we've seen in the broader healthcare market. About a year ago, we started to see higher utilization across the system, higher inpatient admissions, higher surgical volumes. That's been good for hospitals, for people like HCA and Tenet, and for the medical device companies that supply them. At first, we thought it was just a temporary phenomenon, maybe due to pent-up demand from COVID or labor shortages that the industry has dealt with over the last couple of years. But as it's continued for most of the past year, it's starting to look like it might be the new normal for demand going forward. That's been a challenge then for the insurance companies that help pay for the care, especially in the government programs that have relatively fixed annual budgets. So the state Medicaid programs have seen significant challenges from the higher utilization and also from the end of the public health emergency and changes in the mix of patients that are enrolled in the Medicaid program. Medicare Advantage has also seen significant pressure, and perhaps some of the benefits there got a little too generous over the last couple of years, as well as tougher ratings for quality bonuses and stars. And lastly, the industry has been working to encourage the adoption of biosimilar drugs for several years now. Some of the key patents on blockbuster medicines like Stelara and Humira and others have started to expire. And now we finally invested in the supply chain and the financial incentives to grow this market and hopefully save a significant amount of money for the healthcare system. And the last topic I wanted to touch on was the election that happened last week. Obviously, there's going to be significant change in the industry, and we saw that even yesterday afternoon with the appointment of RFK Jr. to the Department of Health and Human Services. Historically, Republicans have been a little bit more favorable towards Medicare Advantage, towards the privately run programs, and maybe are a little bit more generous with reimbursement rates, and again, with the star ratings and quality bonuses. But they do tend to be a little bit tougher on the state Medicaid programs and might look to curtail enrollment and add different restrictions like work requirements. Starting next year, we'll also drug price negotiation under the Inflation Reduction Act, and they'll be targeting the top 10 drugs under the Medicare Part D program. So far, it hasn't been particularly onerous for the 10 manufacturers that were targeted, but it's only the first year, and we'll have to see how the new administration continues that or in what form. And last of all, we do expect a significant uptick in merger and acquisition activity, not just within healthcare, but really probably across the whole economy. I think if we get some new blood in at the Federal Trade Commission and the Department of Justice, plus just kind of reawaken the animal spirits of the corporate sector, I think we'll see more deal making going forward. So in terms of today's agenda, we've got 3 great panels lined up. In just a few minutes, we'll start with our discussion of unlocking the potential of surgical robots and artificial intelligence. We've got a whole host of new robots coming to the market, In some cases, the fifth generation version. In other cases, just a range of new companies backed by venture capital funding and working their way through the regulatory process. We'll take a 10-minute break, and then our second panel will talk about interoperability, digital transformation, and enhancing patient care, which we thought was especially timely in light of the cyber attack that we saw at Change Healthcare, part of United Health Group earlier this year, that really caused a lot of disruption across the industry. And then after a final 10-minute break, we'll talk about advances in atrial fibrillation and treatment. There's a new surgical technology in particular that's really enabled us to treat a lot more patients, do it a lot faster and in a more reproducible way, and that's caused the market for that technology to explode. So at the end of each panel, we'll save the final 15 minutes for Q&A from the audience. So please raise your hand. We'll have mic runners in each of the aisles to bring you a microphone. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce my first panel on surgical robots. We've got Dr. Gretchen Jackson, who teaches and practices surgery at the Vanderbilt Medical Center, and she serves as a scientific medical officer for Intuitive Surgical, who's launching their fifth generation robot this year. We've got Dr. Martino, who's the medical director of robotic surgery at Ascension Health in Florida, and he's a past president of one of the surgical robotic societies. And then we have Josh Stopek, who's the vice president of research and development at HistoSonics, and he's previously worked at both Medtronic and Covidien. So if you guys would like to join me on stage, we can start our discussion. So Gretchen, I wanted to lead off with you with the new DB5 system that you're launching. I was just hoping you could highlight a few of the most important features and technologies that you're bringing to market this time.
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, first of all, thank you for having us here. We're really excited to talk about our fifth generation robot, which launched this year, in March of this year, and Dr. Martino has actually had the opportunity to use that robot. I think this fifth generation robot has offered advantages and innovations in a number of different capacities. First, there is increased automation of the setup. So doing a robotic case requires setting up this robotic machine, and it helps the whole care team move faster in getting that operation started. There is increased autonomy for the surgeon, so they can control more of the instruments themselves. The fifth generation system also has 10,000 times the computational power of our previous generation robots. So you can imagine that that gives us the opportunity to do a lot of things with the rich data that we capture, as well as with artificial intelligence. The fifth generation system comes with Intuitive Hub, which allows the capture of intraoperative video and allows surgeons to bookmark certain things within that so they can review afterwards and share with colleagues or even referring physicians. And then the hub also allows real-time streaming of audio and video to and from the operating room so that surgeons can now seek consultation or collaborate with surgeons who are remotely, or surgeons for our very experienced surgeons who want to learn to do robotic surgery can actually remotely do case observations with some of our most experienced surgeons. I think one of the most exciting things, one of the criticisms of some of the soft tissue robots is the lack of that haptic feedback. So our fifth generation robot introduced force feedback, which is a technology that measures the push and pull multi-directional forces at the tips of instruments and then transmits that back to the surgeons through the hand controllers. And the system was launched with some of our most experienced robotic surgeons, and many of them felt this would be a great technology for your fellows who are learning surgery or your junior partners. But what is very exciting as we start to look at the data from the first hundreds and thousand or so cases that have been done, that we are seeing that even in the most experienced surgeons, by using force feedback, the higher the setting they put that on, the lower the force experienced during surgery. And we have to believe that that will result in improved outcomes. I think finally, going in the direction of artificial intelligence, we also launched our fifth generation system with the tool, tool called Case Insights, which is our AI-powered tool. What Case Insights does is it allows surgeons to view with their surgical video objective insights about what is happening during the operation. It integrates with surgical video data from robotic system events, such as the use of different instrumentation or energy, as well as kinematic data, and gives surgeons objective metrics of performance about what happens during an operation. And we're just at the beginning of our journey, learning from people like you about what those insights mean. But we have seen from the literature that those objective insights, what happens during the operation, are sometimes stronger predictors of outcomes than patient or disease factors.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Josh, I wanted to give you a chance to introduce your robot and HistoSonics, since you're a relatively newer company and newer entrant to the market.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here. As Gretchen mentioned, in launching the DV5, we're somewhat the total opposite. We're in the first year of launching our first version of our system. And at HistoSonics, we really believe in the fact that maybe there's the potential for many medical procedures not to be done laparoscopically or open, but actually truly non-invasively. So with our system, which we refer to as the Edison robot, it actually allows you to non-invasively destroy tissue and to do it in a completely automated fashion. So for Marty or his colleagues, and today we're treating liver tumors, primary and or metastatic. Unfortunately, most cancers end up in the liver, but the goal is you can visualize the tumor through our system. So it integrates, much like Da Vinci, integrates imaging, robotic positioning, and really the center of the platform is our breakthrough therapy, which we refer to as histotripsy. And so it really enables the means to treat non-invasively. And what we mean by that is that we can use focus ultrasound in a totally new way. So I use a lot of cheesy analogies, so bear with me for a moment, but imagine you could miniaturize a Vitamix blender for a moment down to the size of a grain of rice. We can send in focused ultrasound to that size of grain of rice. And in that grain of rice, we can literally liquefy the tissue. So we use a robot because we necessitate a robot. It wouldn't be fair to ask Marty or Gretchen by hand to steer this grain of rice in the indication of treating a tumor. But at the end of the day, under real-time visualization, you can see the tumor, essentially draw a plan on that tumor in 3D, do some minor settings, and you press a button, and then the robot fully automatedly steers that grain of rice, that miniature Vitamix blender, through the full treatment plan, liquefying the tissue. And the nice part about that, in addition to being non-invasive, the energy is very directed and forgiving. So unlike having to be careful with critical structures like bile ducts or vessels or nerves, you can paint over them and they stay intact. In addition to that, because you're not burning or coagulating or radiating the tissue, you're liquefying it, the body can process that through normal resorption and excretion means. So as patients come back and you image them, the treatment sites just literally resorb away over time. And actually, if you come back at a certain time, they're just gone. So you get complete resolution. So kind of not to be overly verbose, but our vision is to bring this through the whole body. So we're starting in the liver, and the plan is then to move through many organ systems, through the body, from the brain, literally through the toe.
And Marty, I know you've used and seen almost every robot on the market. So I was just wondering your feedback on these two.
It's great to be right in between both platforms, because I grew up at a time where we did all the open surgery, and those are big laparotomies. And to think about having to go through a laparotomy incision, whether it's in the chest or in the abdomen or the heart, there's a fair amount of expenses, which your slides really have driven, showing those that we see. But then the patient outcomes, looking at the quality outcomes, the pain, the readmissions, the complications, the length of stay. And in 2001, Intuitive had, one of the first standards, the 2001 over at Robert Johnson. I got to see it and be a part of that old standard. And it was a little challenging, but talk about innovative and transformative to step in. And over the course of my career, I've been fortunate to work through the many different 4 generations, and now the DV5, and see the transformation of how it's changed our patients' outcomes. Now that's the multi-port. So we've gone from open surgery to minimally invasive surgery. Now we're here thinking about incisionless surgery. So we were I'm the past president now of the Society of Robotic Surgeons, and SRS is a group where we have worldwide participation, and any robotic company or AI company in the world is recommended to come to this meeting. Y'all are welcome to be able to see the new technology. And this past summer, I was here and I saw this bubble cloud. And it's only when you see it to really understand and appreciate it. And I saw a few people around it, and sure enough, there was a liquefaction of a little image-like model that looked like a tumor, and it went away. And I said, this is going to change. So we made a visit and looked at the technology, and starting in the liver, and we've learned now they're in the kidney as well. And you start to think about, how do you really go to incisionless surgery? Because a lot of our patients are on, we do chemotherapy, immunotherapy, ADCs, and a lot of additional drugs that are on there. And thank God they're living longer, which is remarkable. But there's a combination to be able to hopefully eradicate and cure cancer. We need the multi-port systems. We need the incisionless surgery. We need pharma to work together to deliver value for our patients and really to help us have better outcomes. So I'm super excited. I feel like I'm just at the beginning, just so you know. We talk about, when you're starting. This is just a great, exciting time to be in medicine. So I'm excited.
I know in the early days, cost was one of the big factors of the robot, of both the system and the instruments. Maybe Gretchen, can you talk about some of the creative financing mechanisms that you've offered to try to overcome that?
Sure. I wouldn't say that I'm necessarily the expert on the financing mechanisms, but I do know that for our academic centers, there are opportunities for the centers to essentially pay by use. And it allows them to build up their fleet much more quickly and accommodate to sometimes a growing and changing environment. One of the challenges around robotic surgery, especially when people are trying to get started, is that access to the technology and access to people to learn from. And so one of the things that our telepresence capabilities have enabled is the ability for people to learn remotely, which is helping people scale up. And I think these programs for alternative financing, or the sort of essentially pay-as-you-go, will be useful for those as they start to ramp up a program.
And Marty, I think you told me previously you've always been able to find financing. Your system's been pretty supportive.
I will say that if you start with the premise that quality care costs less, right? And we really believe that in our core. If you have quality people, a quality team, and a vision, quality care costs less. And you start to put that into a perform and a business plan, you start to appreciate that there's less readmissions, there's less complications. So now you're able to reduce costs downstream. And we published on this as well. And I do gynecologic oncology, but we see it. So there's the AMP model, which is what she's describing, which allows the pay for click. There's the lease model. There's the opportunity to have a donor and say, I'd like to have it be called the Jeff Jonas robot. And that may be something down the road. But there's other ways to do it. But truthfully, once you start to put this into a health system and you think about value, and we talk about it, we think about quality, highest quality outcomes at a lower cost times OR efficiency. And you solve that equation, that drives the value. And that's how we deliver it. And it's really been transformational.
Our company does partner also with institutions and IDNs that are adopting our robots to find the best way to make use of that asset. And sometimes that partnership is a commitment to saying, we are going to show you how you are reducing your length of stay, which allows greater throughput of patients, and have consulting services to do those analyses and to also make recommendations. Should you upsize your fleet, or should we move a robot here that is sitting not being used to another hospital?
Yeah.
And Josh, I think you were able to get a specific reimbursement code that's really helped with the payback period.
Yeah, I would say price for us has not been a barrier for system placements. The patient and clinical demand is pretty tremendous. We have a number of systems even here in the city at multiple hospitals, and we've had hospitals actually ask us to take them off our website because they can't keep up with the demand. I think we realize, because we're such a novel technology, so many lessons learned with new devices coming out where startups try to leverage existing codes that were not great, if at best lost leaders. We wanted to do it totally differently. We wanted the reimbursement to be commensurate with the power of the technology so that Marty, Gretchen, and others could build programs. So we started 5 years ago to pursue proprietary reimbursement codes for histotripsy. It's a blessing and a curse that you need to do it by organ, but we have it for liver, but it pays significantly more than what other standard of care options pay. So it allows the financing of the robots to be very reasonable in terms of the number of cases you need to do to afford the program, and then based on the clinical demand. And I think lastly, we don't try to sell competitive to surgery or local regional techniques or radiation or chemo. It's really additive. There's so much need and so much disease that we just want to be an additional option to layer in, combine. At some point, we'll probably replace those, but there's no emphasis or pressure on that. It's really around meeting that unmet demand, but ensuring that we can meet the economics that allow that to happen.
So we've got some large systems that have 4 or 5, maybe even more robots. Do we get to a point where there's too many, where there's a crowding out effect, or just not room for some of the new competitors?
Oh,
I don't know.
I'll go first. I mean, I think for what we do, from our vantage point for histo, it's so new and we have such a head start. It's kind of like where Da Vinci was 25 years ago. We really, our competition is getting into clinics and how do you add to the standard of care. It's not really other robotic platforms. It's really enabling even those other platforms to do more. So from our standpoint, it's very much greenfield of being able to go in and help bring this new enabling therapy to the clinic.
I would think, looking at your technology, proton therapy, maybe, if given the choice, that it might be one of your potential competitors. But when you think about that grain and you're trying to liquefy tumor in a patient, certainly there's very good data on the radiation side, but potentially that may be. But as too many robots, it's a great question, because this is, again, a super exciting time as we start to see there's over 50 robots plus in the world that are there, both in the United States. We now have, Tava recently having approval a couple of days ago. Medtronic is doing their IDE in urology. So we see platforms and systems that are coming, and certainly it will bring competition, but competition is healthy, because that, will help drive, and Intuitive really has been welcoming that, from what, when you speak with leadership, to say, we welcome competition. Thank you. So it's really, really great to see.
Yeah, I think that the many robots in the field allow us all to get better faster, force us all to get better faster. And it also forces us to develop the right tools for problems that need to be solved. I think we're all, certainly in Intuitive, we're committed to using advanced technologies to forward minimally invasive care and to get patients back to what matters most. And I think you've seen innovation even in what we do. As you said, we've talked about our multi-port robot, but we also have a single port robot, which allows surgery through one incision. We actually, now I'm a pediatric surgeon. We have 5 pediatric surgeons at Intuitive, and we've talked about, maybe we should do open pediatric surgery with that single port. So it's not you and me bumping heads while we're trying to operate through an incision this big. Which is not something that we do right now. But and then we have our Ion robotic assisted bronchoscopy platform, which allows for minimally invasive lung biopsy.
Yeah, and I think that lung biopsy is a new area that's pretty interesting. But what other surgeries are you starting to enter and starting to see some increased penetration in?
Yeah, I think one of the big things that we are seeing is people increasingly using our robotics platform for emergency general surgery. So, it certainly has, in many specialties, we have great penetration in that elective surgery, but we have a number of a number of our surgeons who really, once they adopt the technology and see the benefit of getting the patients out of the hospital faster, that quicker recovery and back to work, they want to be able to provide that in the emergency scenario. And to be able to do that, you need to get surgeons comfortable with the technology and doing that surgery. Second, you need to train your operative teams, and we've developed programs to bring in the entire teams and make sure that we can provide not only the surgeons who can use the technology, but the whole OR staff that is ready to use that technology 24/7. I think we're also seeing many more benign indications. So it's been used for oncologic indications, and we're seeing the robot be adopted for a benign disease.
And Marty, are there new areas you're using it in?
Gosh, when we started, it was GYN and urology. And I was at Lehigh Valley Health Network and built the program over there. The general surgeons didn't really want to be on the robot. In fact, they couldn't believe we were doing robotic surgery and said, you guys don't know how to operate. And us in urology, we're like, listen, you guys do that, we're good. And if you want to come into our cases, we brought colorectal in, then we brought thoracic in. And I was able to help proctor and train a number of these surgeons and grew it out to 12 service lines. Pediatrics we didn't have, so it's interesting to see how to add that. I'm looking and thinking, what's the future for what? And I will say breast. It's super exciting. If you think about nipple-sparing mastectomy, you think about breast cancer, you think about image guidance, you think about the ability, they've got Firefly, which we haven't touched on, but that is one of the molecules that we can inject into a tumor, flick a switch, and be able to see where that disease is located, and then have a margin around it, resect it through one small incision. When this came out in 2018, originally a lot of surgeons, including me and at our team, I said, let's think about this. The general surgeons and plastics said, I don't think there's a role. However, now there's a clinical trial, and when you start to see it, this takes time to adopt, but there in my thoughts will be that. And we're seeing thyroid, I think, as well, looking around out of the US. You look out of the US, a number of people say, who really likes scars? No one likes scars, really. And the standard is here right now for a thyroid. And you start to see the opportunity to have either a scar under the axilla. In Italy, they're going here and other places. So it's interesting to see what's being adopted out of the US and how US surgeons will do it. So those are where we're looking at. We're not doing it now, but I'm observing it.
And Josh, you started in liver, you're going to kidney. Where else are you planning on that?
I would say it's such a compelling opportunity for a non-invasive approach. I mean, most thyroid nodules, as you may know, end up being benign and or breast. To be able to offer a surgeon the ability to localize, target, and then completely non-invasively treat those patients is something we're keenly interested in. So not just abdominal tumors, but thyroid, breast, other benign tumors that may end up on the extremities, as just examples.
You said brain?
Oh, and brain. And so the unique thing about this sound energy, and you may know there are other companies that use focused ultrasound that burn tissue in the brain for either functional neurosurgery or other aspects, but we've been developing the capability to deliver our therapy non-invasively transcranially into the brain, whether for hemorrhagic stroke or clot resolution and or for benign or malignant tumors. So brain is definitely a key area of opportunity for us.
And here's what's interesting is that when you think about what users would use the technology to have credentialing and privileging, you're suddenly, if there's surgeons in the room and my colleagues that are here, there's opportunity for not just a surgical oncologist to do these procedures. So you're talking about the GI surgeon who may want to be able to have privileges to do this, the interventional radiologist, the neurosurgeon, the urologist, the GYN. We're seeing incredible demand, and I'm sure you are too. Yep. But as we're looking to see about building a platform in Florida, I'm in Jacksonville, Florida, as we're starting to see now building that across Ascension and seeing where and who and how radiation oncologists will likely be doing this as well. So that's going to be interesting to see how they're trained, and then how the outcomes are as well.
It's incredibly exciting. Our user base right now is split pretty evenly between multidisciplinary surgery and surgical oncology, and then radiology and interventional radiology. And when these programs launch in major centers, no doubt there are liver-directed care teams that are using it, but the broad interest from breast surgery, from ENT, from neuro, I think everyone gets the vision of liver is really a stepping stone to other applications.
We touched on the importance of imaging and the new Firefly system. Could you walk us through a little bit more about that technology and how it's helping?
Yeah, sure. So Firefly is something that has been around for a while, and it is a technology that allows us to light up, most commonly used probably for the biliary system. So used in cholecystectomy, which is removing the gallbladder.
In general surgery. In general surgery.
I'm gonna, I'll start with general surgery. Yes. And, while this is a very common operation that is done frequently in our country, there can be, and most of the time goes well, but there can still be severe complications. One of the most severe is injuring one of your main bile ducts that goes to the liver, and that can require a major anatomical reconstruction to correct. And so that is a complication one wants to avoid. And what Firefly does is it is a molecule, again, that is injected and lights up the biliary system. And one of the advantages of using Firefly is that it can be shown not just once, but throughout the operation. There is some more than once during surgery. It also provides an indication of perfusion and is used both to look at tissue and understand if you have an unhealthy piece of tissue, of what tissue might be healthy, how much you want to take out and how much you want to leave in, and also can help with the identification of lymph nodes.
Transformational, to say the least. It's your ways, like as a surgeon, it's a ways for us to know what would be the best path. And you can imagine if you're trying to figure out where's your cystic duct, your cystic artery, the time it takes for the surgeon to try to make sure that they actually have it. Now they most do a cholangiogram. We're bringing a whole nother piece of technology, an FTE, to come in and put it in and shoot an image. Now with Firefly, you don't need to do that. Standard of care used to be a full lymph node dissection where women for endometrial cancer and cervical cancer would have a very high risk, 25% plus of lymphedema. No one, again, likes lymphedema, but sentinel lymph nodes, which really was developed here at Sloan Kettering and a lot of the centers around, but MSK's really led that to be able to find that one node on each side. It's the first node, remove it, and then we can look for cancer cells in there. Has been helpful. And then lastly, in colorectal, which was really exciting to see as we started to do our bowel surgery, trying to decide where to remove a segment of bowel where there's either a Gyn tumor in it or a colon tumor in it. And when you inject, it can be IV or into the tumor. And not the ureter, they do ureters, but we want hopefully a different molecule for that at some point. But when you start to look for the perfusion line, if you're making an incision and there's no perfusion, what happens?
Tissue dies.
Tissue dies. Not a good thing. And when you start to look at, literally, the anastomosis doesn't stay together. So you make an incision, you take the bowel out, you put it back together. And if you happen to be in an area where there's not great perfusion, now you have a risk, which all these staplers that our colleagues are working with and developing, now there's still a risk. But having the added insight to understand that at least you feel more reassured there's flow is good. We do need molecules for ureters. And, right now people are injecting in places, but that may be something in the future.
And Josh, I think with your system, it's more about the preoperative imaging. Can you walk us through the process of taking that and loading it into the system and then almost automating it at some point?
Yeah, our vision, well, for what we do today, we live and die by imaging. If you don't have good visualization or imaging, you don't know where to treat. And so we also use medical and surgical robotics to use, as I mentioned, we guide under ultrasound that the robot can actually track the ultrasound video through the body in space and then register that to an MR or CT so you can have the best visualization for planning your targeting. We're also very sensitive in some indications, as Gretchen mentioned, in the head, in the chest, and other areas where you typically don't have good ultrasound visualization. We've developed the capability where you can take the robot and register the robot and its coordinate system to the imaging system. So with a patient on the table, if you collect an image, any image that comes to the system that focus is known right away on the system. And we would ask Marty or Gretchen, their colleagues, just pick where you want to go, and the machine sets up for them. So for us, again, not to be repetitive, surgical and medical robotics is a necessity to automate tasks that we want to help surgeons and care teams perform where the machine can help them. It doesn't practice medicine for them, but if there are tricky planning and setup steps and or actually executing the procedure, it'd be incredible if you could do surgery and the robot do it for the surgeon while the surgeon observes. But that's kind of our vision with our non-invasive approach. So everything flows through having the best imaging that you can have.
3D models is another place where we've really seen an explosion in a large number of companies, including ours, that are making 3D models of organs for preoperative planning and intraoperative guidance. And the value is pretty compelling in the literature. We have made 3D models for kidney, and they've been shown to, when used for preoperative planning, they often as much as 16-17% of the time will change the operative plan, or 20%, 16 to 17% of changing that operative plan from a more aggressive resection to a smaller resection, so allowing the surgeon to preserve more healthy tissue while fully taking out the tumor. And we're seeing 3D models for a large number of organs really help surgeons make better decisions for their patients.
And I would just add, there's also been, as Gretchen mentioned, ion and endoluminal robotics in the general area of X-ray based imaging. There's been tremendous innovation around what is typically in a cath lab or an angio lab, doing a fixed room cone beam CT that gives you really good imaging, but actually making that happen on a mobile 3D fluoro cart at a fraction of the cost. And so you can bring in this mobile 3D imaging and actually do it in an interventional suite or an OR, but it doesn't require having a fixed room, dedicated room. And the new robots that are out can now interact with that and use that, whether it's in the lung or other. And a big part of our vision is leveraging that too, where you don't have to have a dedicated room. All the equipment is mobile. You can set it up wherever you want, but you get the performance and quality of those fixed, integrated, higher cost systems. So again, the theme of breakthrough tech, but at a cost structure and flexibility that doesn't require a proton city block of a proton system or a hybrid OR.
Yeah, I guess, can we explore the advantages a little bit more of the mobile system? I know Medtronic's going that way with Hugo as well. I mean, is it just flexibility? Is it cost? Is it just not enough procedures being done with it yet?
Yeah, for us, being mobile was really so much learning and respect for intuitive and other high intensity focused ultrasound technologies, and thinking through if for what we have, knowing what they already have, what they do, and what they're invested in, to be flexible, to ultimately be multi-specialty and offer the ability to treat in the OR, IR. As Marty mentioned, different specialties have an interest in our technology. We became pretty convicted we have to find a way to have this be a wheelable cart. So you could wheel in through the hospital, different suites and rooms, and we just want to enable the ability to deliver therapy. So our whole business model became centric around making it mobile. And then in the world of therapeutic ultrasound, many companies that have fixed room dedicated facilities that require, for instance, a dedicated MRI scanner for planning and therapy delivery, it's just hard for the economics to work if you need that dedicated room. And so it put a lot of stress on our team to figure out how to design that mobile system, but that's where we landed, and that's our goal. And surely we see applications, not just alone, but even with Da Vinci 5, where we can be treating something that then better enables how the follow-on surgery could be. We want to be able to wheel in and wheel out and not encumber their footprint. So mobile became core to not just the vision, but to make it real.
So you think about mobile, this is under anesthesia today for the most part, but potentially it may not be under general anesthesia. So now you may be in an IR suite under sedation, and to be determined how this develops, but that may decant some of the operating room, which our orthopedic surgeons will love. But when you think about the mobility, right, we've got the modular arms from Hugo. We've got, and they've been mobile, I'd say, from the start. I see at some hospitals that Ascension has, they're moving them in and out of them. And then some say, we should have dedicated rooms. And then the surgeon has their dedicated block. And now we see, some under the bed. So everyone's kind of coming with a little different way to deliver the tools from the minimum surgery. So going to be interesting.
But I guess even though Intuitive's gone the way of kind of requiring a dedicated OR, it seems like you have enough uses and, again, enough capacity and enough commitment from your customers that is working out well for you guys.
It is, although I would say, I think the movement is, if you look at the trajectory of things get smaller, things get cheaper, we're constantly innovating. And I think those trends will continue.
Mm-hmm. I guess that gets back to the cost issue as well. As this is a technology that, like a lot of computer technology, that seems to be coming down over time. So 20 years ago, where the cost of the robot maybe seemed a little bit prohibitive, it hasn't really gone up that much since, and it seems to be a little bit more affordable or just more accepted nowadays.
I think so. I think I think one of the most compelling things is that we're also showing increasing value. And that is because people are gaining experience with the system. We have a larger body of users with more indications, and we're just starting to see the benefits. Where initially, some of that ergonomic value of just not having someone doing a laparoscopic operation torquing on your body wall was the greater functional recovery, length of stay. Now with more experience and people doing more complicated and advanced operations like emergency general surgery, like people increasingly doing complex hepatobiliary operations like Whipple's in a minimally invasive way. Like when I trained in surgery, I didn't think that those two things went together, that we're really starting to see less blood loss, fewer transfusions, markedly decreased hospital stay, and people who might have an emergency general surgery operation that would have been in the hospital for the week, go home the next day. So I think with the greater innovation, we, if cost staying stable, maybe over time going down, we're also seeing the value going through the roof.
And it'd be a great MBA student experiment. But you think about, I feel like the early business plans putting in the price of a robot, hasn't really gone up significantly. And certainly the instrumentation costs have relatively stayed the same. And we all know there's been a little bit of inflation. So you sit there and say it's something to see how they've been able to scale around the world and continue to develop. And clearly they have an incredible lead on that. But to your point on same day, patients are really going same day if done in qualified center with skilled hands. And there's still a lot of general surgeons that may or may not believe in the technology. And we see them regularly and we're working with them. And that's where I think the hub is going to help. For instance, a robotic Whipple is what she's talking about. I mean, if anyone here has hopefully had a Whipple and has been cured, it's a major operation and a large incision. But now, so Sharona Ross, who's a friend who was on robotic surgeons, she said, I do them robotically. I was like, most general surgeons and surgeons are not. She's like, oh, I can. I was like, I got to see this. Can you show others? So I logged into her and streamed her out. And she was sure enough doing a robotic Whipple. And she said to the male surgeons, if you don't want to do it, just send them to me or come watch me operate. And that really has been driving a lot of, the minimally invasive surgery, the sharing, the collaboration of videos. And we learn a lot from our colleagues around the world of what they're doing as well, which is cool.
Yeah, I think I can't emphasize enough the ability to use telepresence to go observe others and the impact that is having, one, on adoption of robotic surgery, but also on health equity. And we have a surgeon in the middle of Wyoming, 90 miles from the closest robotic surgery expert, who wanted to adopt this technology. And he's someone like myself who's a mid-career surgeon, trained when in the 1990s, when laparoscopic surgery was taking off. And we thought we were the cool kids doing that kind of minimally invasive surgery. But we just missed robotics. It wasn't part of our training program. And it's really hard, especially if you're in a rural, underserved setting where you don't have, the hot shot with the latest, greatest technology being recruited to your major academic center for you to learn these new things. Once you start in practice, you don't necessarily have the opportunity to learn. And I would say at a time where, the major worries of any hospital executive right now are workforce, burnout, people retiring, and for good reason. There's nothing more exciting than being able to learn something new and hone your skills. So we have this surgeon in Wyoming who wanted to pick up robotics and be able to offer that to his patients. And he assembled, went and did our training on the platform. He's a very good surgeon. He knows how to do complex operations and has done many cases. And we provided him with a team of people to support him as he took on robotics through telepresence. And he was, doing, started with the cholecystectomy, which most people in general surgery start with, and then was doing complex reoperative cases by his second week. And he felt he was able to do that because he could bring anyone, including a Sharona Ross, if he wants to decide to do Whipples, into his operating room. And I think that's really exciting. I mean, even without, there are people who, or centers that may have expertise in a particular procedure or have those reps on a particular disease state, and you aren't always exposed to that in your training. But how amazing to be able to say, wow, I have this really hard case and I'd like to bring the best person in the world into my operating room, and you can do that.
I'm just going to think about where this is headed, because if that surgeon in Wyoming needs an extra hand, that's where we think about telesurgery, and we're talking telepresence, but remote surgery. So we had the Minister of Health from Angola come in to SRS this past summer, and she walked and she saw these and she said, I need to bring this to Africa. We need to bring this. And we're like, talk about being able to transform and help a community. So they bought, I believe, 3 platforms from Microport, and they've now been we're actively training through SRS surgeons there to be able to do this with the ability for telesurgery. We see in China and other countries the telesurgery still being evaluated, but without question, that's something in the future. And in the United States, there's nodes that are being built around, Dillon is working with Savato to see where these are. And I would ask, are you close to opening up and letting me operate from Jacksonville to Pensacola?
Well, I think I could say globally, I don't think that the barriers are technical.
Right.
So I think they're going to be medical legal, that we have to work out, what it means to be, and if it is allowed, and what the licensure requirements and the liability requirements. I think, the technical barriers of being able to do those things, those have already been shown, so that you can achieve that. And I have great hope also that those barriers will be overcome. We saw what happened with telemedicine visits before the pandemic. Nobody did it was very unusual for people to do telehealth, and it was rare. And now I want that. I had a cold a month ago, and I'm like, I'm not going to sit in an office for an hour. I don't have time. I can do a Zoom call from my home office, pick up my kid on time, and get the medication that I need. So I think, all those barriers came down with the pandemic. I think we'll see the slow evolution there also.
Awesome.
And Josh, your platform seemed to lend itself even stronger to that, where maybe a technician could do a lot of the pre-imaging and the setup and maybe be supervised remotely.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously being a non-invasive procedure, not having the complication of how you set up and once you do incise, the risks of being within the body, and then how you manage bleeding all the way through closure. So we're really bullish on the long-term future of, as a non-invasive technology that's image guided with continuous real-time streaming of imaging, that we could not only support those remotely, but also and the ability to reinvest in how we rethink what a program is, not also needing to have clinical reps in cases there physically to purely have the support network be the hospital staff and a virtual hub. And then today we can stream our cases today. I'm a case addict because I just love learning about how our procedures are going so we can better help configure and iterate the technology for patients and our treating physicians. And it's just incredible to be able to see a case happening in real time. So I think the future potential for that is pretty limitless.
But still having surgeons, there's still a job. We'll still be there. You're still going to have your doctors that'll be there, and there still has to be that. But yeah, it's going to be.
I mean, I think even in the interim, as you were mentioning last night over dinner, the ability to have multiple rooms going where the physician prescribes and accepts and initiates therapy delivery, but can go to the adjacent room should there be an issue. There's a staff member that can intervene and or just call him back. But the way we've configured our platform, which is why we believe teleremote or at a distance is possible, is there's a pause button. You can literally hit a button. The machine can wait. The doctor can come back. You can resume because you're not physically in the body.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we said we'd open it up to Q&A, and we're at our final 15 minutes now. Are there any questions from the audience? Right here? I can repeat it for the crowd.
Hi, Steve Brooks, Brooks MedTech. Excellent discussion. This is a question for Dr. Jackson from Intuitive. I was very interested in your data capture correlation with outcomes and data analysis. You talked about how the addition in your fifth generation robot of haptics was so interesting, and you were able to measure less tension, less abuse of the tissue. One of the early criticisms on surgical robotics when it first came into place was there was no outcomes. It was an arms race because it was sexy and expensive. Now you've got terrific data validating outcomes. So here's an opportunity to answer a fundamental question of surgery. Why are some surgeons better than others? I would love to know at Intuitive, what kind of data infrastructure do you have to capture these outcomes that are going on? Do you have registries? Are you doing prospective trials? Is this something that Intuitive is interested in doing?
Yes, certainly. So thank you for that question. I think, I'm glad you highlighted that because it is I'm from the digital part of my company. So I think in addition to having this brand new robot with force feedback, we also have Case Insights, which is putting together surgical video and objective metrics of performance that come from a combination of video data, which can be segmented into surgical phases, procedure agnostic phases, as well as procedure specific steps or tasks. And then the data from the system, event data, kinematic data, put together with video that gives us objective metrics of performance. And we can measure things like, certainly the time, something simple like the time for a particular task, or how much a surgeon rotates their wrist when they're sewing, or the economy of motion, how much space they use, and so on. And so I do think this has been the missing piece of the surgical outcomes puzzle. So if you think about it, almost all surgical quality work has been patient or disease factors. Are they obese? Do they have poorly controlled diabetes? Is it stage 4, not stage 1 cancer? Or really simple surgeon or institutional factors, like how many cases have you done? Anyway, it's a lot. Or is it a center of excellence, but that what happens during the operation is not something we've captured. So in terms of an infrastructure, we are starting to give back to surgeons their data. So a few years ago, launched the My Intuitive app, where we do deliver some of those metrics. And we started with simple things that we have, which are like the times that it takes for people to do things and the instrumentation they use. And then with our new Case Insight solution, we're starting to deliver more rich objective metrics around the use of force feedback, and have the ability to deliver very robust insights like economy of motion, wrist articulation, things like that. In the research that's been done in the literature, again, it's very exciting. We see some of these measures, we call them objective performance indicators, OPIs. We see that some of these measures, again, can help predict outcomes, and they're stronger predictors than those patient and disease factors. The other thing we've seen some work of Andrew Hung, now at Cedars-Sinai, a urologist, that when you take those top factors that help you predict outcomes and you measure surgeons and line them up by experience and by OPI performance, it's not the same group. And when you compare their outcomes, that the inexperienced versus experienced, no different, but the people with the better OPIs have better outcomes. So very exciting opportunities for us to understand what makes good surgery. In addition to our Case Insight solution, which is combining that video and objective metrics of performance, we also have a new solution that we did launch at a few selected sites called Insights Engine, which is basically like a little a platform to help surgical researchers that want to ask the questions that you're asking, what makes good surgery? And that will allow surgeons to bring in clinical data from their institution and put it together with the objective system data that we have. We do have some partnerships also with organizations in bringing together some of that data at scale, and have worked with a group in Germany to bring together clinical outcomes and do analyses, and are working with some of the other larger data set providers to be able to bring those data sets together at scale. So stay tuned.
These outcomes. Some companies, Abiomed was really successful over 10 years with their VADs before they even got approval of capturing this data. And now they're just cultivating this data to get new indications and publish papers, monthly. So it's an incredible opportunity. And I want to hear if Intuitive was actually capturing that.
Yeah. And let me just add on to that is really one of the questions I look at that is if I need my gallbladder out today, which hopefully I don't, who am I going to go to? We're going to see.
John.
We should be at a point in America to be able to look on an app, find out the surgeon performance, understand the metrics that she's talking about, and know where to go. And they should have the highest quality, lowest cost, and be able to choose. We're not there yet. We got a lot of way to go, but that's the start of what she's talking about. They can predict and understand the path lengths of our hands when we're operating, and then separate surgeons already now is linked, but separate those into quartiles. Even the top 1%, like Informed is looking at that with the top 1.1% of surgeons, creating a pool of surgeons, and then go direct to payers and say, hey, that's one of our top people. So there's a lot of new things that are working on.
I would say I like to think about these objective metrics, not as just good, bad, but as actual levers that you as a surgeon can pull in the operating rooms, or dials you can turn to get the outcome that you want. So we all know that sometimes we have to make trade-offs in intraoperative decision making. So I had a patient who had a child who had Kawasaki disease. They had big coronary aneurysms. I did not want them to clot them off and drop dead. So the operation that they needed, I wanted to do it as quickly, safely, but as quickly as possible. So it may not be as the most delicate, the most finessed operation that I did, so that we get them out of the operating room alive. And you can imagine that the OPI profile, the objective measures for your best oncologic outcome might be different than your best functional outcome, which might be different than your fastest operation. And sometimes as a surgeon, you have to make those trade-offs. So I think we're giving surgeons more tools to be able to understand what contributes to outcomes in their technique, and to, turn those dials as you need to have the best outcome for the patient.
Okay, we have another.
Things that this is a fantastic presentation, and I love the interoperability of the three of you on the stage. One of the things that is particularly promising here is the ability also not just to collaborate on the surgical level, but rather integrate at a higher levels on the holistic side, because it meant, diet, other issues pre-surgery, which again could affect the outcomes. And also taking those surgeons, those great surgeons who have that particular expertise and experience set, and being able to really assess the risk. In other words, to me, that's very important. And I can give you a personal example. My boyfriend almost died of an aortic aneurysm a few months ago. And we had the great good fortune to have one of the greatest surgeons in the world on call, who had also saved his life a few years ago. But he took the risk. He had a team of collaborators. This was at Weill Cornell. And he had a team of brilliant collaborators, one from infectious disease, one from this area, that. And together, they decided not to do a TAVR, which was the kind of the de facto way, but to really do something that required the surgeon to take 10 hours to reconstruct and do really bold moves of surgical correction. But to me, it seems that, again, integrating all these factors is so critical to the way you will achieve success. And I think one of the things that also is important is the human intervention. You know, we're all fascinated by AI and all this stuff. But I remember a poem I read years ago by the great German poet Rilke, who said, in order to get the answers, you have to know what questions to ask. And that's based on a lot of experience to be able to pinpoint those questions to get the outcome answers that you need.
Thank you. Yes.
Jen? Yeah. Yes. What, if any, environmental impact does this robotic surgery have? Has that assessment been done? Is it good, bad, or otherwise?
Yes. So we have at Intuitive a whole sustainability program. And while I actually do not have all of the numbers in my head, that is readily available on our website. And it is something that our company is very committed to.
Yeah.
So a two-part question, if that's okay. So last year there was a big misconception that, you know, GLP-1s would somehow impact bariatric surgeries, right? So I was wondering, are there any other misconceptions that come to your mind right now, currently in the field of surgery, that, like last year, it was just, if you asked anybody who was in surgery, you know, at some point they did think that, you know, these might actually completely replace bariatric surgery, which I thought was completely ridiculous. But, you know, I imagine that there's probably still some misconceptions. So any idea what those misconceptions might still be?
I mean, I will tell you, which is why I'm glad to be between the two of them. I'd be more concerned about the stuff he's developing, because that is going to start to go throughout the body. And I'd be, you know, as that is adopted, and if the outcomes continue to show what they may be showing, it's going to be really interesting to see. That's sort of where my mind is first going with that. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I think actually and I'm excited about too, I will say that there's a great opportunity for our healthcare ecosystem business to be turned on its head in the next couple of years, and for us to return to understanding the effects of the environment, our diet, and our activity, and how that influences disease. A lot of chronic disease, most of the chronic disease burden is from what we eat or poison that we're getting from our food. You know, unless you're walking on the outer aisles of the grocery store, you're likely ingesting something that's just terrible for you. And there's so many hormones in the food, as well as, you know, just high caloric density foods. So I think there's a great opportunity for us to go back to some of the basics. I think if you want to read a great book, was transformational for me, Food Over Medicine. And I think we'll be going back to food over our medicine. I hope our medical educational system will also start to focus on those interventions first. And I'm most worried and absolutely overjoyed to think about people being a lot healthier.
I'll try to ask it from here if I can.
Yeah.
Given the way technology is involved in so many different related ways, there's always a lag factor. Law, regulation, and insurance. Are there any particular barriers that are now existing in terms of the way this had to be done, that are causing delay which cannot be overcome, or is it starting to change with the groups with whom all of you have to interact?
It's a great question. The hospitals have the doors open to be able to have the technology. When we think about robotics, in 01 is when, I'd say, it started to be developed. It got FDA approved in 06 for GYN. And it really, even in 2012, 13, 14, ACOG was still saying avoid robotic surgery. It took about 10 to 12 years for that to go. And for me, I would say, it was about 7 years for me to really, I did not want to do this in 01. I was fine doing laparoscopic surgery, excellent surgeon. And then I'm like, wait a minute, there's something different about this. I can see in 3D wrist articulation, and there's something different. It took me 7 years to be able to get that. Hopefully with telesurgery and things, we can now adopt that as well, make it shorter.
I was going to add, I don't know if it meets the three that you shared, but it's been so humbling in the past year. We've been at this for over 20 years, but we're just commercializing in the last year. So the development cycle is long and arduous, but there's this change. So coming from, I spent most of my career in surgery and intervention. Now we do non-invasive procedures, but the true patient demand has been overwhelming, humbling, saddening. The amount of phone calls that come in to these hospitals, and it's really our hospitals prepared with something that's so new, disruptive, to have the infrastructure, because the doors are open and the equipment's getting in, and then when the phone rings, even though the doors are open, there's not enough capacity or capability to think through how to support these programs, which is really forcing a lot of thought on how do you do that. But it's something that we see. I made the joke, and I didn't mean to sound flippant in any way. It's like truly humbling, like hospitals saying you need to take us off your website because we can't handle the 100 phone calls we're getting a day from patients. Because what we're finding, which we couldn't have predicted or expect, most cancers end up in the liver or the lungs or the brain. They're not typically locally dealt with. So when you offer something that doesn't exist, that's so new, and now with so much social media and information technology, patients are so much keener, sharper, aware, as they should be, to find where they should go and what they should do. And there's just not the infrastructure in place to manage that. So as more less invasive capabilities or truly new options come, there's a lag to be able to receive them, to have the infrastructure to pull them through. Yeah.
It's a very real factor. The more of this information that's available, and then available to financial, particularly insurance people, strikes me as something that's a key here. But at the other time, that also causes the differentiation, and then you have one group getting built up better than others, et cetera, which adds to yet further complications with all this. I thought just you might have some interesting comments on what one expects or thinks of the insurance industry in terms of dealing with this.
Yeah, I think I would +1 on what Josh said. I do think we are coming in. I thought we were in the age of transparency, 10, 20 years ago, but I think we are really coming into that age of transparency with more, and loved the comments from the middle of the room around the power of that consumer. Yeah. And being able to drive that. And I do think that the data that we and others are putting out there about what we're doing will create enablers of acceleration of the technology rather than that barrier. I think people will start to say, oh, we are seeing where there is a signal that there's a benefit here, and we'll push it forward.
Okay, well, unfortunately, we are out of time, but I'd like to thank, first of all, my panelists for their contribution, as well as the audience. And now we'll take a short 10-minute break before we convene for our next panel.
Jeff Jonas is a portfolio manager at Gabelli Funds. This podcast is an excerpt from Gabelli TV that appeared on December 9th, 2024. Gamco is providing these links as a matter of general information. We do not intend for these links to be a complete description of any security or company, nor is it a research report with respect to any of the companies mentioned herein. As of September 30th, 2024, affiliates of Gamco Investors Incorporated beneficially less than 1% of all companies mentioned. The analyst's views are subject to change at any time based on market and other conditions. The information in this posting represents the opinions of the analyst and is not intended to be a forecast of future events, a guarantee of future results, or investment advice. Views expressed are those of the analyst and may differ from those of other GAMCO officers, analysts, other employees, or the firm as a whole. Because the investment personnel at GAMCO and our affiliates make individual investment decisions with respect to the client accounts that they manage, these accounts may have transactions inconsistent with the information contained in this posting. Certain GAMCO personnel may know the substance of the posting prior to its posting. This webcast is not an offer to sell any security, nor is it a solicitation of an offer to buy any security. Stocks are subject to market, economic, and business risks that cause their prices to fluctuate. When you sell shares, they may be worth less than what you paid for them. For more information, a prospectus, or summary prospectus, visit our website at www.gabelli.com or call 800-GABELLI or 800-422-3554-914-921-5100 fax 914-921-5118 info@gabelli.com.